One Percenter Podcast with Sam Bakhtiar, bringing you the 1% knowledge to help you reach your full potential. Learn what it takes to rise above the 99% and become a 1%er.
Hey, what's going on? It's the One Percenter Podcast. It's your host, Sam Bakhtiar, and I'm with the podcast man himself, the guy who I think you pretty much invented the game on podcasting. You had me on your show over a year ago.
Yep.
Omar, the rock star ELATTAR. What's happening, brother?
Thank you for having me on, Sam.
Bro, it's an honor and pleasure, man. We were talking off camera how crazy it is that now you're on the other side.
Yeah, it's
now I get to drill you fucking questions, man, because you drill me all kinds of questions. Now it's time for me to ask you questions. But before we start, because I really want what I want to get out of this, because this is more for me. I do these podcasts because I want to fucking learn.
Right.
It's like I'm getting a free coaching session with you, and I want my audience and my everyone here going to get the same thing. So tell me really quick, before we start all of that, let's talk about your past a little bit. I just want to touch on that for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you had a dark past, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I see you right now. Everybody sees you right now.
Right.
You're a successful young man. You interviewed the top people in the world. I mean, people from Grant Cardone to Tony Robbins to Ed Milet's and to Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, you're the fucking man when it comes to the podcast. I think you're the Michael Jordan of podcasts.
Thank you, man.
But let's talk about before. You weren't always motivated. You weren't always in this space. What was going on before?
Yeah, man. So first of all, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And yeah, I'm excited to have Tony on. And it's crazy, man. I trip out all the time because I can't believe that I get to do what, if life was perfect, I would like to do.
Because I think you talk about it. I think Tony is it was always the ultimate for you.
Oh, of course.
I mean, that's the man, you literally worship.
Yeah,
and I do too. I mean, I love Tony. I think Tony is the man when it comes to personal development of all time.
Yeah, he's the king. And he's been the king for decades. And all these new guys pop up and he's still at the top, unquestionable. But to answer the question, man, I started out kind of like where I think most people do, right? In school, you're trying to figure out what you want to do in the world. Maybe you see people with nice things, you see the Ferrari, you see houses, and you sort of get the inkling oh, maybe I could do that, But as a kid, if your parents don't do it, your environment doesn't do it, your family doesn't do it. I actually grew up in Walnut Diamond Bar area.
Okay.
So San Gabriel Valley, between LA, OC. Always grew up in SoCal, and my parents both, have full-time employees. Both have had the same job. Literally, they started working in their 20s and worked there for 30, 40 years until they retired. So they knew stability and structure. But as a young kid, man, I played soccer. I wanted to be a professional soccer player. Started skateboarding. I wanted to be a professional skateboarder. Started making short films and acting and doing theater. I wanted to do that. I never wanted to. I always wanted to do something I was passionate about. I couldn't verbalize it that way as a kid, but I always wanted to just do what I loved to do. I didn't aim
you want to do some cool shit.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't aim to be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, and my parents are, I'm half Middle Eastern, half Mexican, so it's a very working class type thing, and I never wanted to do that. But as a kid, you don't know what's possible. And then I'll never forget it. There was a day that my whole brain switched. I went to go watch a soccer game with my dad. It was the Galaxy in LA, and I was watching the soccer players play. And this is when I played soccer. And I remember at the time, I was watching, it was my first soccer game ever. I was maybe 11 or 10. And I remember seeing them play soccer, and they was like Kobe Jones and the names of the soccer players that were big at the time. I was watching them. And I remember asking my dad, whoa, Dad, they're real people. And he's like, yeah, they're just normal people who just kept playing soccer and they became pro. And I was like, does that mean that if I work hard, I could also be, live my dream and be a pro? And he was like, yeah, you can. And I remember, it was whoa.
Light bulb went off.
Yeah, that was the moment where I was like, whoa, And I think literally from that moment on, I then realized, oh, anybody I see who has anything I want or aspire to have, I could do it too. It wasn't that profound as a kid, but I remember my brain permanently from that moment on.
Had a shift.
Yeah, there was a shift of oh, I could be one of these people. I don't just have to look up to them. And from that moment on, it became a quest to okay, let me do what I love. Let me get close to them, I would go to autograph signings for soccer players and ask them for advice, hey, how often did you practice? And then when I got into skateboarding, I would meet pro skaters and be like, how many hours a day did you practice?
So you're always very curious to learn. You're always, like
I
you were
wanted it so
interviewing at a
bad.
young. You were
Yeah.
interviewing back then at a young age,
Totally.
right? So you were a
Totally.
born interviewer. So you got to be one of the best interviewers that I've ever seen in my life. And I'm not saying that because you're here, but you know how to ask real awesome questions. You really you get the best out of people that you interview. I know you have with me, and I've talked to Ed and Grande. They said, man, he's the best that we have done with, we have dealt with, so now
I care.
You care. And
I think that's the difference. I really give a shit. I really, really, really care. And when I ask questions, and I think most people have that curiosity, I just don't think they built the muscle of it.
Yeah.
And you know a thing or two about muscles. but yeah, I think, I just repped the muscle and I just became infinitely curious. So I remember as a little kid, I would go to gas stations and see somebody with a Ferrari, and as a little kid, I'd be like, excuse me, sir, like, what do you do for a living? What advice could you have? And my parents would always be like, shh, stop asking people, stop bothering people. But I just never, ever, I'm telling you, ever since I realized like, oh, they're a normal person like me, they just did some things differently to end up in that situation.
You wanted to learn and absorb.
I became obsessed. What's the difference? What did they do? What did they do? What was it? So I always was asking questions from a frame of I give a shit. And I think also too, the fact that when I started the show, like I was totally broke. And I went like literally from being totally broke to, I told you the other month I had, a 6-figure month. And that blew my mind that was even possible. But like, if you go back 3 years ago when I started, I was totally broke.
It's crazy, not a 6-figure year, but a 6-figure month. Because
yeah,
a lot of people say, I make 6 figures in a year, and that's pretty good.
Yeah.
For normal standard, right? But now you're making 6 figures a month. You have made it 6 figures in a month. That's fucking crazy. I want to congratulate you.
Thank you, man. It was crazy. But, when I started $30,000 in debt, broke, lost, depressed. Was drinking and smoking, and a girlfriend broke up with me. I was at rock bottom, so I was like, shit, man. I was working at Tesla as a sales rep. I was just in the muck of being lost.
You were just in a slump.
In a slump,
right? You were in a no man's land. You were just going through the motions, drinking, smoking, a job that you weren't passionate about. And on top of that, life circumstances, girlfriend, because you're not happy, probably you start smoking, doing drugs and drinking and whatnot.
And I'm 24 at the time. So in my head, I'm like, fuck, I'm already halfway through my 20s. I had all this curiosity, all this passion, I ask all these questions. I got nothing to show for it, and I'll be 30 in 6 years and shit, I haven't done anything. And I just remember that it just ate at me and just ate at me and ate at me. And then the girl broke up with me and I was like, oh shit, it was even worse rock bottom. So I remember, I'll never forget it, man. I literally, one day, I was smoking a joint, put a joint in my mouth, lit it up, and was like, all right, I'm gonna smoke this joint. And this is the last joint I smoked before I changed my life. As I smoked this joint, I wrote out this manifestation of like everything I wanna do with my life. I had a life coach. I think I paid him $800 for like a 1-hour call. It was my last $800 that I had.
So your life coach, you paid $800 to a life coach, smoked the joint, and wrote your shit down.
Yep.
Ain't that a bitch?
And I remember he asked me, said, if life was perfect, what would happen from this moment forward?
Yep.
And that I left the call and I told him I'd get back to him. I couldn't afford another call with him, but I literally wrote down, okay, if life was perfect, I would make money doing what I love. I would connect with amazing people. I would surround myself with inspiring people. I would every day work with my friends. And I didn't know how it would come together. The foresight for a podcast didn't even come to mind, but I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And little by little, I started to put pieces together of like, oh, maybe this, maybe that, maybe this. And at first it was I wanted to spend time with successful individuals. And the first thing I did was like a day in the life YouTube video with this guy. So then we tried that, and then that went great. And we had a couple thousand views, but then it took forever to edit it. So I'm like, what about doing interviews? So I did one interview, fell in love with it, and then did another, and I did another.
How'd you come up with the name Passionate Few?
It's funny, a lot of people ask me that. That's a great question.
That's a great name.
Yeah, thank you, man. I was debating all these different names, and I remember I was at a stoplight one time, and I remember it was a red light, and the light turned, and I had been pining, what am I gonna call it? So it was a red light, and I told myself, I play these weird games with myself sometimes. I'm like, God, just send me the answer, like just make it clear. So I asked God for the answer, and I said, I swear to God, I'm not gonna move on the green light until I decide what the name is. and the light turned green, and I sat there, and I couldn't think of a name. There's cars behind me. They're honking at me. Yeah, and I just remember it was like God divine. It was just like the passionate few. It just
came.
It just came. And I never looked back. I went, and on the way home, I called a graphic designer, said, hey, can you draft me up the name is The Passionate Few. Can you draft me up 6? I need it by the end of today. Like urgency, urgent action. And literally that was it. It just came to me. I was just thinking, what do they all have in common? They're inspired, inspiring people, inspired minds, passionate. They're passionate.
So tell me about how'd you land at your first interview? Tell me, because for people who are starting a podcast, by the way, podcast is one of the best platforms right now to get started. And I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have you in my corner, have you coach me. You helped me start this podcast, man. I really appreciate it. I mean, I go pretty much anywhere right now, and people come up to me, oh man, I listen to your podcast. I love your shit. I'm like, oh wow, I can be in a different state, and and I'm like, wow, so. It's kind of like, it's crazy how many people are now into podcasts and how much reach it has. So tell me, how'd you landed your first one? And for people who are starting out, you know what I mean? How do they go by getting guests on their show?
Yeah, so you gotta work the DMs. It's all about the DMs.
It goes down in the DMs.
It goes down in the DMs, man. When I started, I think my first 1 or 2, and I recommend most people, your first 1 or 2, kind of get the ball rolling with the local hometown hero. Maybe a local entrepreneur, maybe somebody you know, just to go through the motions, see what it's like. But my first big guest was actually Tom Bilyeu. I think he was like the 3rd guest I ever had. He's the billion-dollar founder of Quest Nutrition, Quest Bars. And I DM'd him probably 22 times, just nonstop. I would just send a message. He didn't read it, unsend it, resend it, unsend it, resend it, unsend it. I would
you can unsend it? Oh, okay, I just learned something new.
Yes, you don't look like a creeper. But yeah, I was definitely a creeper. I mean, I was relentless, man. I was relentless, literally all day long. That's all I did.
So you got Tom for your first one?
My first big one, yeah.
Damn, that's pretty good.
Yeah, he was my 3rd one. I did like 2 small ones, and then he was my 3rd one. It was pretty quick, and it's funny because it's funny. The biggest people are actually the easiest. When I interviewed John Paul DeJoria, billionaire founder of Paul Mitchell, Tequila.
What a great interview. What that was, man.
Thank you, man. Yeah, it was very easy. It was my personal trainer. His parents were in business with him. I asked. They sent an email. He said okay, and that was it. It was so easy.
So
the power of network.
I guess networking and just being relentless, not taking a no for an answer. Keep following up. These are the things that I'm hearing. Is that pretty much sums it up?
Yeah, that sums it up. But for people listening, just starting, what I would say is when you're trying to get your first guest, work the DM, and I'll share with a strategy if I may.
Yes, please.
What I recommend everybody to do, and I share this all the time, and I share it inside of my course, the High Ticket Podcast Accelerator course, share it with all my coaching clients, is when you're reaching out to people, you can't guarantee anything. Okay, you can't guarantee getting in touch with anybody. All you can do is maximize the odds. Okay, so to maximize the odds, reverse engineer it. When you're going through your Instagram feed. Right? When you're going through your Instagram DMs, what pops out? The emojis, right? The characters, the heart, the happy face, the whatever, not the words, especially somebody like yourself who gets fan mail every day, people asking for advice or money or whatever, right? Every day.
Getting crazy.
So the way to stick out is to, number one, is like visually. Like if somebody puts an emoji, it's gonna catch your eye. If the next thing someone sees is your name, if say it's like a camera emoji and then a world emoji and then a microphone, it's like, Sam, quick question. And that's the heading. You're more likely to look at that than you are, hey, Sam, I'm a big fan of your work. Oh my God, you inspire me so much. I'm starting a podcast. I would love to be on your...
It's almost like an email open rate. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what it is, right? You try to get the subject, the headline. You have a split second to capture somebody's attention. So you want to, get the art in your favor. That makes total sense.
Exactly. And then the other thing too is, one thing I say is, you have a quick heading, nice heading like that, and then you compliment, context, question. Compliment, context, question. So compliment, hey,
headline,
Sam.
compliment, context, question.
Exactly. So, hey, Sam, quick question. Love what you've done with the 1% thing and your mission in the world. Context, I have a show, da-da-da-da-da. And question, love to interview on the podcast. Who'd be the best person to talk to see if you'd be a good fit? Boom. Compliment you. It's efficient. We caught your attention. And I'm not wasting time with a long thing and this and that. The reality is that you have to earn the ability for that long thing, for the attention. And so the way you do it is that way. And then if you ask a question, instead of saying, hey, can I interview you? Because your brain's gonna go.
When I get a DM, when it's something like this big, I don't even read it.
It's overwhelming.
Bro, like I don't have a whole minute to sit down. I'm juggling 10 things at a time, man.
Exactly.
You know, and for those people who are, who are going after, they want something out of someone, man. I'll tell you this, man. Never just ask for something. Always ask, hey, and if there's anything I can do for you, please don't hesitate to ask, right?
Exactly.
And I'll always try to reciprocate. Don't be a taker. Offer to give.
Exactly.
Because when you give, you're gonna get, but if you just keep asking, this morning, man, pretty much every morning I get 10 of these, like, hey, would you mind spending an hour with me, this and that? I said, bro, and I don't want to be mean. I just want people to understand. I said, look, you expect me to leave my work or take away from my children to spend an hour with you. Not one time did you ask me, hey, I wouldn't mind paying for your time. Like, I don't need anyone's money. Like your money doesn't even matter, right? A couple of $100 is not gonna make me or break me out. I don't care. But just the fact that you expect me to take time away from my children, from my family, from my work, and for everything that I need to do to spend an hour with you. Imagine if 700,000 people that follow me do that. Imagine.
You wouldn't be where you're at, yeah.
So when you reach to someone like that, because I've never been like that. I've never been like, hey, man, first, if you really want to be gangster, first give.
That's right.
First give.
And the one thing I tell people too is, imagine if with your ask, someone created a piece of content. So say, for example, someone made you a 1-minute clip for your Instagram. And now I know you guys are probably listening, you're gonna probably go do that. But if somebody made you a 1-minute clip and then they asked you after, or they made you a cool photo thing or some type of thing, then you go, oh wow, this person's different.
Bro, it's big time. Look, I don't know.
Same thing with me, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever been in this situation. I don't know, when you go to Hollywood or Venice Beach, you walk around with your girl, the guy jumps out of nowhere and gives your girl a flower. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Your girl smiles, oh, wow. And then they come up to you and say $10.
Yeah.
And you look at them like, oh shit, I can't. If I don't give this guy $10, I look like a dick.
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
So do that. Do that. You use reciprocation as a tool, as a tool to get what you want. But if you're somebody who's asking, especially with somebody of a higher profile person, you know what I mean? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't, you have to kind of respect that, you know what I mean? They have so many things to do.
Exactly, and give, and let this be an example to all of you guys. Like when I started zero, $30,000 in debt, zero followers, zero team, zero money, zero capital. People could tell we didn't even have equipment. We were renting equipment.
That's gangster.
Just to give you context. So, we were bootstrapped winging it, and to think that we sat down with the Ed Milet's, people like yourself, and as we built, it was really about that quality communication, giving value. And remember this, the perception should always be that they are getting, not that they are giving, right? Yep. Like, for example, nowadays we built enough value in the marketplace to where people come to us, right? It was just on Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street's podcast. Big guests come to us, and we're trying to schedule it to fit them in on the schedule. Hey, this month doesn't work. Maybe next month.
You have to put in the work.
Exactly.
That's earned.
Exactly.
You don't just put up a podcast thing like the big guy's going to come up to you.
Exactly.
Especially if you act like a douche and all you do is ask. Before I forget, I saw that you posted something on Instagram, and that you were coming here, and what you should ask me and stuff. Yeah. So I went through, and I was like, man, I was going through. I was preparing some questions. So somebody asked me to ask you, what are the top 3 questions? Ooh. Somebody should ask. If you had 3 questions to ask on a podcast, only 3, what should they be?
Number 1, what was the turning point? Right? What was a significant turning point?
Love it. So good.
Number 2, what are current vulnerabilities or current challenges you're dealing with?
Very good.
Because it humanizes your epic story, but shows the vulnerability to the audience. Now, in your Ferrari, in your successful business, you're still you're in the midst of everything.
People look at us and they don't think we have problems.
Oh no, we got more problems.
We were talking about it off camera right now. It's just different type of problems. You know what I mean? Different types of problems, different types of magnitude. It's no longer a problem of, hey man, can I pay my mortgage? That's not a problem anymore. It's just a different kind of problem.
Yeah, or now it's how do I pay my employees, or how do I pay my team, or how do I, taxes or relationships or things like that. And then the number 3 thing, this is tricky because I love childhoods. I love questions about the childhood. I think a lot of people can relate to it. So obviously I'm torn between, for the 3rd one, asking for their best advice to people out there. But I think I would say maybe the childhood question is more important.
Because you want to see what happened during a childhood that because for you was when your dad said,
Exactly.
when your dad said, hey, if you work hard, you can be a professional soccer player, right?
Exactly, yeah. And because also too, what I find is that the reason I think our retention has been so great is that when you start a podcast, prefacing it with their childhood, for everybody listening, they start the movie with you, right? How often do you watch something and you don't have context, and because you don't have context, you get lost? But if you start at my childhood and I say, oh, I played soccer, then someone listening goes, oh, shit, I played soccer. I wanted to be a pro soccer. I didn't too. So people start saying me too, not so what.
Yeah.
And the more you can get people thinking me too, me too, me too, the more they're going to go along the ride with you.
Got it.
Those are my top 3.
All right. So when it comes to podcasts, I know a lot of people do these podcasts and things like that. And I know you have a course.
That's right.
High ticket podcasts. That would be
Accelerator, yep.
And I know you're just killing it with it. I mean, I know a few people who signed up for it and they say nothing but great stuff about it. How do you monetize your podcast?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's really cool for people who are starting a podcast. I mean, I'm fortunate enough, for me, monetization for me is just learning from you and all the guests that are here. I feel like I'm getting a free coaching session.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I'm in a point in my life that I don't need to monetize everything. I can just do things for passion.
Right, yeah.
But when I was in my 20s, starting a podcast, I'm like, man, at some point, man, I need to, convert this into money, right? So if somebody's starting a podcast because they really want to, obviously deliver value, but later on they want to monetize it, how are they able to monetize a podcast?
Yes, there's a couple of different ways. Number one, if you already have an existing business or hustle or something, having a podcast is a great way to sort of share it with a new audience, right? So you can leverage the attention to sell your products and services. So that's the first thing, right? So say you're a personal trainer, you start creating content or you start interviewing fitness people or you start sharing stuff about fitness, well, now you have a bigger reach, right?
Reach and bigger audience.
Or say you're in real estate, whatever it is. So it's the same thing. So that's number one, is to leverage your current business to just an open audience. Number 2 is going to be through what's called affiliate marketing, right? Or digital revenue. And this is where I specialize in. And that's basically realizing that every single view, even if you think like, I'm starting and only 12 people listen or only 100 people listen. Well, I started there too. It started with 1 person listening and then 100 and then 1,000 and then 1 million. Now we're over 5 million listeners. But literally every single view is a human being. Yeah. You got to think about that.
You have an audience.
Exactly. You start building an audience, but when you start, you realize that every single view is 1 person. And if you can help 1 person, whether it's through a fitness product or a course or a training or something, if you can offer them a product or service, well, now you can make what's called digital revenue, right? Affiliate marketing, which affiliate marketing is basically where you can plug a product or service or link inside of the distribution channel of your podcast. And when people click on it and they purchase it, you get a commission of the sale without you having to create the product yourself. So that's a way to build affiliate revenue. And now when you have, dozen, 100, 1,000, 100,000, 1 million, well, all those little sales start to add up. And when you have commissions anywhere from a couple bucks to $500 to $1,000, you can start seeing how the numbers start to add up while helping people, and it's passive. So that's one of the most beautiful parts about it. Number 3 is sponsorships. Sponsorships and advertising revenue. I mean, I think even with YouTube, not that it's the big play, but you can make anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 to $8,000 to $10,000 a month doing it for a lot of people.
I mean, that's hey, $8,000 to $10,000 a month, man. That pays for most people's whole lifestyle.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you can get what's a mortgage on $1 million house? $6,000, $5,000, $6,000. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And $8,000 to $10,000, man. I mean, $10,000 is $120,000 a year. I mean,
totally, yeah.
It's not a bad living, just passively.
Exactly, and not only that, it's from creating content that you control. Nobody's telling you what to do. Nobody's forcing it. You do it your way, your rules, your guests, your name, your brand. And not only that, the cool part is when I used to work for Rob at the Fantasy Factory, I interned for him, and I learned about what's called synergy, and that's where you have sort of one vehicle that you have all your businesses in.
And they all feed into each other.
Exactly, they all feed into each other. So for example, your podcast, but you also have the 1%, but it also leverages your enterprise with the transformation centers. So it's like this hub of all in one. And so you can start creating that. And that's what I'd encourage people to do.
Grant tells we're in an attention economy, right? So every time we can get eyeballs and attention to you, it's just a matter of time for you to be able to monetize it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And Dan Fleischman said, you did something great.
Love
Dan. A big shout out to Dan. He said that, I asked him a question, who should have a brand? He said, whether you like it or not, you already have a brand. Mm-hmm. Everything you do is your brand.
Totally.
You know what I mean? So, so when you're doing these podcasts and when you put in all this time in, it's going to over time monetize by itself. Would you agree?
Exactly, yeah. And you build an audience, there's so many things you can do, from selling merch and selling clothing to then doing coaching, consulting, to doing masterminds, to doing workshops. There's just so much you can do literally from one piece of content, and never before, whereas Facebook ads are now, the prices are going up and the ROI is kind of going down. Same thing with Instagram, is when you have platforms like YouTube and podcasts, which, by the way, the highest earning audiences are on podcasts. So not only that, you're now pre-framing and selling to people who are already at an income level, a mindset level that you can help. It just becomes a perfect vehicle for limitless evergreen audience.
It makes total sense. I mean, who's going to listen to podcasts? Not middle income people who are interested in self-development, making more income, bettering themselves.
That's exactly, investing in themselves and their time and their resources. And then not only that, think about, you can take one piece of content, say this 1 hour interview, right? And we can chop this up. Now this 1 hour video on YouTube is also a 1 hour segment on Spotify, on iTunes, on Google Podcasts. It's a 1 minute clip, all from 1 hour. And not only that, how much did you pay for it? Zero. Yeah. Where else on social media can you do that? And so that's why podcasting is one of the most powerful platforms going forward.
So I know a lot of people, started podcasts, but many of them are really not successful.
Most aren't.
Most aren't. Do you have the stats on that by any chance?
It's about 70-80%.
70-80%, they started and they never do anything with it, right? Why do you think that is?
I think they didn't begin with the end in mind. I think most people are dabblers, not masters. And somebody like yourself knows that too well. Most people, they dabble.
They want a home run. They want to do 2 podcasts and fucking have 1 million views, right?
Exactly. Most people are dabblers, and I think people that start with a vision or a mission, it's probably like yourself, right, in the transformation space. Think about it. The effort it took you to scale to over 100 locations and growing now. Someone put that same effort and built 2 or 1. Yeah. And they go, well, how'd you build 100? Well, you did it in the same 24 hours that they had. But it's because from the beginning, you were thinking big. So I think it starts with that. Most people are dabblers, not masters.
So true. Most people are dabblers, not masters. I have to use that in one of my posts, man. I love that. This is the first time I've heard that, and I love that saying. That's an original quote.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a great interviewer and an okay interviewer?
Yeah. I think a great interviewer actually gives a shit. I think if you really give a shit, people feel that. And I think when I started, I was more concerned what the audience thinks. But now I'm actually kind of selfish with it. I look at it like I'm a student taking notes. Okay, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? It's for me.
But because chances are, if you're so into it, then there are people that are already into it.
Exactly.
Right? There are hundreds of people who are thinking the same thing, because you want to get the maximum out of this person instead of worrying about what other people want to get, because at the end of the day, other people are you.
Exactly. Right? And not only that, the intensity of curiosity that most people experience, nobody itches that scratch. So what I mean by that is, for example, as we sit here, say I was interviewing you, right? I know for a fact that there could be soft topics I could ask you that are comfortable or easy or fun, right? But I also know that there's somebody right now watching this who's maybe homeless, maybe broke, maybe just down and out on their luck, thinking, well, fuck, easy for Sam to do. He was buff anyway. It was easy to start a gym, right? Whatever logic they might be using. But I know that if I ask you, for somebody like that guy, I know if I ask you, well, Sam, you didn't always start out fit, right? You were a little bit scrawny. Talk to me about what made you do that, and what did fitness do for you in business? How did that translate? And now he might go, oh, shit. So so maybe if I get fit, that'll translate.
Yeah.
So I think coming from that place, and you do that once, twice, a dozen, couple hundred times, I just kind of am in tune with what they need to know. And again, remember, I started the show when I was totally broke. Most people start shows that are successful, at least, or that are already, like yourself, in a position of, relative success. When I started, I had nothing. So I was literally like, okay, what's your best advice for this? I was asking from a place of I need it now.
I need to make some money, man.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to pay for these cameras.
Yeah, exactly. And it's no wonder the more people I interviewed, the more my income grew. Think about that.
Yeah.
I don't think that my income would have grown the way it did had I not surrounded myself
100%.
with people like yourself, learning a little thing. And it doesn't take a lot of things, right? Kind of like a book. If you learn, or a seminar, a lot of people say you spend $10,000 on a Tony Robbins seminar. Yeah, but if I leave and 2 or 3 things permanently shift for me, what's that going to do for my business or my life?
People don't get it, man. I mean, people just don't get it. You just need one piece of information, one person away from making your next $1 million.
Totally.
You're just that close. And if you change your proximity and change the people, your association, and that's going to put you in a favorable position to meet that person or learn that one thing that's going to make you $1 million or $1 billion. Is that simple? You sitting on the couch, fucking watching the Kardashians and reruns of whatever you're into is not going to do it, man.
And your standards change too. I remember when I started, my goal was to make $10,000 a month. I was like, dude, if I could make $10,000 a month, I'm set, bro. And then I remember, not too long ago, I have one of my buddies, and I have a lot of buddies now that play at a much bigger game, but I have people in their mid-20s, they're making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a month. And so, and now with the show, I have all these eyeballs on me, so now I got pressure, because now I have to produce. I have to, even making $100,000 a month to them is like, come on, bro, you're playing small. You start hanging out with people like yourself, Ed Milet. Suddenly your standard of what's possible is just stretches, even just to show up at the table.
Bro, me, when I went to Ed Milet's jet, when he took me on his jet, and I'm like, to me, jet was like, oh, that's not out of my league, right?
Yeah.
For me, it was out of my league. That wasn't even part of my goals. I'm like, I don't know, man. It's one of those things. But when I sat down in that jet and Ed described how easy it is for me to get one, all of a sudden now it is part of my vision board.
Yeah.
Because he broke it down, like, for me, it was always like the unreachable. You know what I mean? So was this Ferrari.
Exactly, I was gonna say, just like this used to be.
So was this Ferrari, but somehow, I got the Ferrari, and then I again went back to my little comfort zone and said, man, maybe that's just too much, And no matter who you are, what you are, you always have that little comfort zone. You go back and like, well, I don't know, man. I don't know if I can get there. And just like your dad taught you, you can be anything you want.
That's
if
right.
you're willing to be obsessed about it, willing to work for it, and just willing to do whatever it takes to learn from it and move on, man.
And you don't let it go. Most people let go.
Because they want a home run.
Exactly, they want a home run, and most people want the short run. They're not willing to play the long game. Most people won't go 10 years for the Ferrari. They'll try for 2 or 3 and go, fuck it. I don't want to be greedy anyways. It's not about money. It's about being happy.
Yeah, that's the biggest bullshit. Yeah, it's not about the money.
Yeah.
I remember they were interviewing Floyd Mayweather. I love Floyd. I don't care what people say because he's real and raw.
That's right.
I've hanged out with him. I know his cousin. He goes out to 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning parties. He doesn't drink in bed. He buys drinks for everyone. But next thing you know, he's in the gym the next hour.
That's right.
Doing his thing and all that kind of stuff. But they were talking about, why he's talking about, why he's Floyd Money Mayweather, why he cares so much about money, right? He tells the interviewer, he goes, I'm a prize fighter. If it's not about the money, what the fuck is it all about?
That's true.
He goes, I'm a prize fighter. I'm a prize fighter. He goes, what the fuck is not about? I'm fighting for a prize. And that's money.
That's true.
So if somebody tells you, no, it's not about the money, it's not the money, you know what I mean? Because money is freedom.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And people say money doesn't buy happiness. Well, neither does poverty.
Yeah. Poverty sure as fuck don't buy happiness.
Exactly.
Tell you that.
Exactly. And so I think too, to speak to your point about the Ed thing with the jet, is when you surround yourself with people like that, you start to see that the path is a lot clearer than you think. And I think that's one thing I've learned in my journey, and I'm learning at this stage, is that when you see other people, you start to think like, oh, it's this impossible journey of like all these obstacles in the way. But then when you actually meet them, it's like, oh no, I just did this, this, and this. Like how often have you, for example, in your business, right? I'm gonna kind of ask you a question.
Yeah. Oh, you got your interview hat on. Okay.
Nature,
no, we're going back and forth. God, you got the interview, okay.
Is like, wouldn't you say that there was limitations in your business that you perceived that were a lot more intimidating than when you actually did it and broke through and you were like, oh shit, that was easy. Why didn't I do that sooner?
It's just fear,
how
right?
Often did that happen in your business?
It happens now.
Exactly.
It happens now. We all have it. It all have it. Grant had it. Grant had it about becoming a billionaire. You know what I mean? Remember he talked about it. You know what I mean? He had the limit of like he can't be a billionaire or too much, even though like his wife kept pushing him and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's not enough time.
Not enough time. Okay, so I'm just pulling up my phone because I wrote some notes.
All right,
and I want to make sure I don't forget, right? I wasn't trying to be rude, don't be on my phone, but I got some notes. What's your number one piece of advice for anyone wanting to start a podcast?
Number one piece of advice for anybody wanting to start a podcast, just start. Take imperfect action and just start. so many people get analysis paralysis. They work on their logo, the name. I'm working on my website, right? They spend a month. How many people do you know spend more time on their logo than working on their business?
Oh, that's some bullshit.
You know?
I mean, I'm so glad you said that. I think that's advice about life, right? Advice about life. Just fucking do it.
Just start. Just get your first one. Right? Just get the ball rolling and let the momentum.
You started with $30,000 in debt and cameras that you rented.
Rented.
You know what I mean? People want the perfect lighting, the perfect camera, and the perfect setting, and this and that. And just do it. Just do it. Just do it. I mean, I think content is more important, and doing stuff is more important than not doing anything. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, frequency beats perfection, especially in social media. Like, if you can just put frequent action, it's kind of like the gym.
I love it. I'm just, bro. You got 2 quotes now. Frequency.
Frequency of action is more important than perfection of action. Initially, right, to get the ball rolling.
I don't know if you guys are writing this down, man. My boy is dropping bombs, man. I mean, the thing is, I've heard all the quotes, but you gave me 2 quotes that I haven't heard.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, man. I'm like, damn.
You got it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
You got it. And then the other thing for podcasters, I know we spoke about it earlier with when I got in touch with Tom Bilyeu and when I got the other big guests, is like, when I send them the DM, like, if I ever got a no, most people go, fuck, shit. So what I would do is I would say, okay, cool, no problem. Would it be okay if I follow up in a month, right? Because a month is gonna fly by anyways, and guess what? If they say, yeah, sure, which most people will just to put you off, now when you follow up in a month, they can see the thread of the conversation saying that I'm gonna check back in a month. So they kind of feel guilty and kind of have to give me the interview, right? So little things like that will help you.
And they respect that.
Exactly.
And anybody can just say, hey, interview. But a serious person that says, hey, okay, no problem, it's not the right time, but can I follow up with a month? And you do exactly in a 1 month, that tells them you are a serious player.
Exactly.
You take your business seriously, you take your podcast seriously, you set what you want to do and you follow through with it, and that automatically gets you respect.
Exactly, and 9 out of 10 people won't do that. The other thing here, I'm gonna give off 2 more points because I feel like it's important. The other point is, when you're starting a show, like when I DM Tom, I would always try to make it easy for them. So for example,
you have to.
Exactly, I would always make it easy for them. So for example, one thing with Tom, I said, what's the easiest way to get this on your schedule? We can come to you, no problem. And and literally after I think all the 20 times I hit him up, finally the one he responded to, he was like, yeah, sure. Here's my address in Beverly Hills. Here's my assistant. Blah blah blah. Here's the number to talk to.
You was like, fuck yes.
Yeah, he was like, how's Tuesday at, I think it was like at 5 a.m. or we had to get there at 4 a.m. or something. Like it was some crazy thing. So I was like, yes, sure, absolutely. And literally I just committed.
And then you hit up Lewis and Lewis was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. It's funny, at that time, I actually remember.
Shout out to Luis Castro.
Shout out to Luis Castro. It's funny, I actually remember too that we needed a backup camera person for that day. And to talk about imperfect action, I found a random guy through Facebook or Instagram that morning that met us in Beverly Hills. I met him in Beverly Hills for the first time ever at 4 a.m. It's like pitch black dark in Beverly Hills.
Talk about taking action.
And just met him. We had 5 minutes. I said, hi, my name is Omar. Okay, so we're gonna do an interview shoot. I explained, do you have the lens? You don't have the lens? Okay. I don't even know what I'm doing. Till this day, do I know how to operate a camera? Don't know how to turn it on.
Me neither.
I don't know how to do anything, right? But I figured if you build systems and teams, which I know you're a master at, and you can figure out how to focus on your zone of genius, they focus on their zone of genius, and together you build momentum. But literally with Tom, that's what it was. I just committed, said, okay, made it easy. We'll go to you, 4 a.m. Fuck it, we'll do 4 a.m. That's fine. And made it easy for him to do it. And then I got one, and that's the other thing too. All you need is 1 or 2 breaks that open up the doors for everything else.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you get somebody like Tom in or somebody like Grant in, then other people will see it. They're like, hey, dude, like, you know what? He's a serious player. If Tom interviewed him with him, Grant and Ed did, okay, he's a serious player. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So let's get that. Okay, let me go ahead. Keep going. I want to get some more questions.
And then one more thing. If you're starting as a podcaster, it's a lot easier, I'm not gonna lie to you, when you have leverage, right? When you have an existing body of work or when they go to your Instagram and see value. But here's a little secret that I teach people, and I teach it inside of my course, teach my coaching clients. If you're starting a show but you don't have a body of work yet, use this language when trying to get guests. Say, I have a show that's in post-production. So my show's not up yet, it's in post-production, and I'm interviewing entrepreneurs or whatever your niche is, and would love to have you in the lineup once we launch. This way, you see the strategy here?
I love it, bro. I love it.
This way, when the guest says, well, send me a link or show me your work, you go, well, we're in post-production. We don't have it yet.
That is gangster.
So now you're getting rid of the objection of, well, you don't have an audience or show yet, and flipping it to your advantage, saying, hey, we're in post-production, but we'd love to have you in the lineup when we launch.
Guys, he just give you a copy and paste. Just copy and paste that shit. It doesn't get easier than that, right?
Yep.
So somebody asked me, what's your reach out strategy for networking on social media?
Yeah, so networking on social media, it kind of goes back to the DM thing, but also comments, like commenting on people's stuff. But what I found actually is the most effective is referral. Knowing somebody who knows somebody. So for example,
like when you reach out for me to put you in touch with Manny.
Exactly, exactly, Manny Coachman, exactly. Another example would be, for example, say you see someone and for whatever reason you can't get through the DMs, right? Say the DM strategy doesn't work. Well, then I start looking at their Instagram. I see who's their photographer, who's their assistant, who's their wife.
So you basically stalked them.
Basically, yeah. I basically stalked them.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
It's not wrong with ethical stalking.
I ethically persist.
Yeah.
I ethically persist.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
And I just find an assistant, a photographer, and there's someone, chances are if they have a following that big, they either have a personal trainer, an assistant, a photographer, somebody with a low barrier to entry, and give them the pitch, ask them to make the intro, and give them value. And I swear, if you try that 4 or 5 times, things will work. I remember when I interviewed the creator of Hot Cheetos, who actually now has a movie that's being directed by Longoria, 20th Century Fox. This is the creator of Hot Cheetos. Literally, I was broke, lost, depressed. I used to drive, check this out, talk about persistence. I asked him for an interview probably 15 times. He said no. I think he almost blocked me on social media. I found his wife's Facebook and Instagram, his nieces, his nephews, all of them blocked me or just didn't respond to me or whatever. So I'm like, shit. But I was determined because I don't know if a lot of people know this. The reason that I wanted to interview these people in particular is that the girlfriend who broke up with me, shout out Emily, how do you like me now? Is she was huge on 3 things, okay? Number 1 was Hot Cheetos, number 2 was Quest Bars, and number 3 was Grant Cardone.
Oh my God, you interviewed all of them.
And I had the number 1 most watched interviews in the world with all of them.
What'd you say to her just now? How you like me now?
How do you like me now?
Do you know that song?
I know it, yes.
Do you know Kool Mo D?
Yes.
You know Kool Mo D?
I do know that
you know
song,
what?
yeah.
Because that song was what I listened to when I first started lifting.
Yeah.
Because after each set, I would do wow. I would get in front of a mirror and pop an amino acid pill or a vitamin. How you like me now?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And now, you know, that was like, you know what? We all know the best revenge is what?
Massive success, yeah.
And you already did that.
It's crazy, man.
Shout out to all them bitches that didn't didn't give us a chance back in the day and give us all the fucking hard time. Yeah. How you like us now, motherfuckers?
It's true, man.
Sorry, man. Sorry, man.
It's true. It's true, and it's funny because with him, I drove. He said no through all those mediums, but I was so determined because for me, it wasn't about getting a podcast guest. For me, like the reason I took unreasonable action because I was determined. I had a bone to pick. I had to prove this girl. I was like, all right, she broke up with me. I was like, all right, you don't want my fucking time? Well, let's see who wants my time. And so that's why with Hot Cheetos, I literally drove. He spoke at a church 3 times. On top of all those rejections, 2 times in person, he told me no. The 3rd time, he literally looked at me and was like, bro, you don't give up. Let's do your goddamn interview.
So, I'm gonna fuck it, man. you're gonna keep stalking me. I'm gonna give you a chance, right?
Yeah, he did it. And it's funny because literally last week he called me and I was in New York. And he was like, hey, I want to do another interview round 2 before my movie comes out. So think about that. Think about that.
Damn, he reached out to you.
He reached out to me. And sometimes he'll even call me to chat. You know, people like yourself. Yesterday, I got on the phone with Joel Marion, who runs a $100 million a year company.
Yeah, shout out to Joel, man. I love that dude.
Yeah,
He's cool as fuck.
And to think that this would become my network all because I pursued this dream out of pain and turning it into power. It's surreal to me, man. I wake up every day to fan mail. Literally, these K-Swiss shoes.
So real quick, man. So real quick. So you started doing this
out of revenge.
Out of revenge.
Yeah.
Okay.
Spite.
So you didn't get up one day and say, you know what, I want to change the world. No. You know, I want to make a difference. You said, I want to show this bitch what's up. That's basically what you said.
When I started, yes.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I know. It's different now, but when you first start, right?
Yes.
I love that. Why? Because most people try to suppress their dark side. They don't want to talk about their dark side. But you had this dark side because she dumped you, you know, and you were out in the dumps and you were like, you know what? I'm just going to show this bitch what's really going on. I'm just going to show that. You use that motivation to catapult you. And you know, it's funny because I had kind of a similar situation. You know, I got served with divorce papers in 2014 where, you know, I was just getting back on my feet after the recession. You know, I went to hotel right here, Hotel Chino Hills, right off of 71 Freeway, for $67 a night, because I didn't want to spend any more. I was there for 4 months, and I remember, I was 40 years old, bro. I wasn't even young. I was a young person.
Yeah.
I was crying. I told myself, what am I going to do? I just got, I just seen the light at the end of the tunnel after recession. And now I'm going to serve with divorce papers, and I'm not going to see my kids and all that kind of stuff. So I had a choice to make. Am I going to go out, get drunk and, chase women, or am I just going to fucking work and show them what's up? And after that, that's when we started blowing up the camps, and now she's all pissed off because, obviously, I am where I'm at right now, and she wasn't there for the ride.
Let me ask you this about that, the interview. Hats back on.
Yeah, let's do it. You interview me now.
When, how important do you think that was to your success, the pain, like coming from the place of pain, versus if you were just like most entrepreneurs who was like, yeah, I think I want to start a gym. Like if you were just inspired to make money.
Bro, the
how
pain
important was
always
that?
drives me more.
Yep.
Pain always drives me more.
100%.
I mean, I think all my life, the reason I'm successful was because of pain. Pain of not having pain of not having a father.
Yeah. Oh.
The pain of not having a father, not having a provider, pain of going to people's homes and they had all this nice shit and I didn't have, and they were getting Christmas presents that I couldn't get, and bikes and all that kind of stuff.
Pain of being an outcast when you came to the States.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pain of coming to the United States, being made fun of, getting cut from the basketball team, telling them that, hey, you're never going to be an athlete in the United States because you're Middle Eastern and you guys don't have anything like that. That's why I became the first bodybuilder in history to have a first place title in every weight class.
Hey.
So for me, pain always drove me harder. And from what I understand, if you're talking about, I think Tony Robbins talks about this, is, the difference between pain and pleasure. People will pretty much pay so much to stay away from pain than to go towards pleasure.
That's right. You'll work harder to keep somebody from stealing $1 than you'll work to actually make $1. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why the news, there's not a Channel 9 News. Let's tell you what's all the great shit that's happening in our community today.
It's the bad news.
It's always the bad news. I've tested this before. You send out an email with a subject line, good news, same body, same everything.
Oh, wow.
Good news or bad news.
Interesting.
Bad news gets like 3 times the open rate.
I'm going to tell my copywriter that. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Interesting. Yeah.
Test it. Bad news, good news.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. People like tragedy.
People like drama.
Misery likes company, like the expression goes. Yeah.
100.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now that you have, you're doing great. You're young. You're doing great. You have, I would have to say, the best podcast on the planet.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? You are, a podcast guru, a podcast coach. You have your courses. What's next big thing that you're excited about?
Yeah.
What is the next thing? What gets you up in the morning and what keeps you late up at night?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So every day of my life, the best feeling in the world, no matter what's going on in my world, is I get fan mail every day. And although there's the people who ask you for money and stuff like that in the DMs, the coolest thing is when people tell me stories. This morning, I woke up to this girl who, her father passed away. And she was going through a rough time, and it's just her and her mom. And so they actually mentioned your interview and 2 other ones that they listened to, and that inspired them. So her and her mom started a business a couple months ago, and they just started making some money. And she's so grateful that I asked certain questions because it showed them that, hey, somebody in that situation could do it. So after a while of getting stuff like this every day, man, I don't care about the ex-girlfriend. Or, recently I went through another breakup with another crazy person, but
crazy bitch! Crazy bitch! You're crazy. I got to tell you something, man.
Yeah.
One of my best friends, man. I mean, one of my best friends, man. One time, he was talking about all these girls that were crazy. He's like this. He's like, well, this girl was crazy, and this girl was crazy, and that girl's bipolar, and this girl was crazy, and this girl was crazy, and this girl was crazy. And I told my best friend, I said, hey, listen. The only common denominator is you, brother.
Yeah.
Every girl you meet in the world can't be crazy, right?
True. That's true.
Sometimes you got to take I'm not saying
that
you're
crazy. No, I get you. Yeah.
But with him, man, he's literally like said 12 names that these girls were crazy. I'm like, they cannot all be crazy. Yeah. Don't tell me you're fucking normal. You know what I mean? Yeah.
It's true. No, it's true. And I think it's about finding people who are compatible with your crazy, at the end of the day. especially as an entrepreneur, it's such a high level thing. It's not the type of thing where, we can hang out after 5. It's like you need to always be on. And so it's important to find someone that you can, vibe with on that front for sure. But yeah, man, pain is power. So as far as the fan mail and stuff like that, that for me is what drives me. Not the fans per se, but the stories of the fans.
Yes.
And so now what's next is to just keep doing what we're doing. I love what we do so much. People ask me all the time, what's your guys' plan? So, we didn't start with a plan other than to just do what we love and share amazing stories. So on the one hand, we want to continue that. We have business plans, obviously. But in terms of the show, just more content, especially focused on YouTube, because I really believe the future of making money online, having impact, is reaching people through the power of the internet and through podcasts and YouTube and all these other outlets that as they continue to grow. I think one of the most important things to realize is no matter where in the world you live, you have access to it. So for example, if you're a fitness coach or you want to start a coaching business around your passion or interest, well, what if you start creating content on YouTube and then trying to attract people to it and collecting emails and learning about all the basics? So for me, it's really about continuing to serve my mission to humanize greatness one story at a time. That's always been the mission of the Passionate Few. But beyond that, it's just to create content that helps people wherever in the world they're at get to the next level financially in their mindset. And so for me, it's just about doing that. I also realize I'm in a great position at a very young age to continue to do it. So I just want to keep doing what we do, man.
I have a question for you, man.
Yeah.
So how long did you do what I call free work till you started monetizing your podcast?
That's a great question. So I actually was not intelligent with it, but it took about almost, out of 3 years, probably took 1.5 years.
That's exactly what I wanted to get by. Because I knew a friend of mine, back in the day.
But in retrospect, I could have probably done it in probably 3 to 6 months. Yeah, but I just didn't know.
But I mean, a lot of people want to do podcasts right now and make $1 million.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And they want to do 5 podcasts and, I'm not getting paid, there's no views and all that kind of stuff. A friend of mine, Chris McComb,
be patient. Patience pays.
Shout out to Big Chris. He started a blog a long time ago called kickbacklife.com. And he literally worked for 3 years just blogging, nothing. He lived in a little apartment, blogging. And next thing you know, his blog blew up, bro, in like 2 to 3 years. Next thing you know, he's at the mansion, got the cars, got the things. And for those people who are listening to this, man, there's big lesson to learn. You put in like 3 years of work, 3.5 years of work, and you didn't even know what you know today, right? And you started monetizing your blog after 3 years. Now, you're the, like I said, you are the, podcast guru. You have a blueprint, you have a course. So for people out there like want to start a podcast, there's 2 choices, really. I mean, to me, in life, there's 2 choices. Figure the shit out by yourself. It might take you 3.5, 4, 5 years, because back then, when you started back then, there was no podcast guru.
Oh, no, nothing.
There was no podcast guru, because I'm sure if it was, you would give your last $800 like you did to that life coach, smoking weed and writing your shit down. You know what I mean? You would have done that, right?
Yeah. So
you took your time to learn the hard way. You made all the mistakes. You made all the things.
I made all the mistakes twice, 3 times.
So you made all the mistakes, and now you put that knowledge into an accelerator course, so people can be able to now take that and avoid all the mistakes that you have done and pretty much jumpstart the process. So
that's right.
Basically, you said, it can literally be done 6 months to a year. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know what your course is or how much it costs, but here's my mind of view. As someone who's addicted to success, you know what I spend money on?
What?
On speed. And I'm not talking about the drug. I'm not talking about you want speed, he's on speed. No, I'm talking about speed. If I can do something that usually takes 3 years in 6 months to 1 year, it's a no-brainer. Right. Because I don't have 2 fucking years to waste.
That's right.
Right? So for those of you that are listening to this podcast, honestly, I don't get a red fucking cent recommending this. It's just life. It's just life. I don't care if it's podcast. I don't care if it's fucking real estate. I don't care if it's fucking training. I don't care. If you want to accelerate your life and accelerate your success, find out who the fuck is the best at it and get mentorship, get coaching, get whatever it is. In this case, you're the king of the podcast. You're the Michael Jordan of the podcast. You want to learn from real estate. Go see Albert Preciado, Grant Cardone. Go see Danny Morel. Go see Christian Fuentes. Whoever people that are. But don't just try to figure this shit out by yourself. That's bullshit. You know what I mean?
And think about, the one thing I say is whether you invest in the course or not, or anything in life in general, is the price that something costs if you do it. Think about the price if you don't do it. Think about the price if you don't do it. Think about the price of time, effort, energy, failure, rejection, money, motivation, commitment. Think about the price in that context. And when you evaluate whatever it is, whether it's personal training, a course, business, whatever in life you want to get, a book even, think about the price if you don't do it.
I mean, people go out there and buy $1,000 shoes, $500 shoes, Jordans, $800 iPhone, things like that. But they don't invest in themselves, man. And what I've learned in life is that when somebody said, invest this is the greatest investment. When somebody asked me, what's the greatest investment that you can make? I said, the best investment is in yourself.
That's right.
The best investment always will be. You are your highest ROI.
That's right. And one thing I've come to realize is the exact anxiety you feel when making a purchase or investment, that pressure, that's the exact pressure necessary in order for you to take the action to make the thing happen. And I think most people avoid pressure. And I think, have you ever gone to the next level in your fitness or in your business without some form of tension or pressure?
No.
Nothing happens without tension or pressure. Think about hunger, right? A certain amount of tension and pressure in the stomach. Think about sex. It's a certain amount of tension and pressure.
It's been a while, man. I'm married. Man. When you're married, man, that sex thing kind of goes away.
Well, without a sense of tension and pressure, there is no next level experience. And so don't shy away from the pressure in life or whatever it is that you're pursuing. Use it. Use that pain, turn it into power, whether it's in this industry or any other one. It's like you said, there's always a guaranteed ROI when you bet on yourself, so bet big on yourself.
Brother, it's an honor and pleasure having you on the other side.
Yes.
This way I get to interview you, I get to ask you a question. I know you're well known. I don't know, your podcast is probably downloaded in pretty much every country. Everybody knows.
Over 5 million listeners.
Yeah, over 5 million listeners. YouTube channel is blowing up. You're blowing up. 6-figure a month earner, after putting years of hard work, renting cameras, calling people last minute that you didn't even know to come in for your first podcast and just winging shit, talking about taking imperfect action.
Yeah.
But for some reason, if somebody doesn't know you right now and they haven't heard from you, how can they hear more about you, where to find you, and more about what you offer?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate that, man. And it's been an honor to be on the show.
And by the way, man, I'm going to take that shirt from you, man.
Yeah.
That's badass.
Thank you, brother. And, I'm honored to be on the show. Thank you, first and foremost, man. It's an honor to be here in front of my one of my
Your favorite.
Yeah,
When the pistol comes, you can have this.
Oh, congrats on that, by the way.
Thank you.
But if you guys want to find me, you guys can follow us at The Passionate Few on YouTube. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, pretty much every platform worldwide. And also you can follow me on Instagram at Omar_the Rockstar, and shoot me a DM if you have any questions. If you're interested in checking out the course, you can check that out. For coaching programs or anything you like, happy to serve you. And if not, stay tuned for all the free content we have coming out soon with The Passionate Few.
So let me recap for all of you guys, man. So here's what I've learned from Omar today, right? Use your pain to start something huge, right? You were in pain, you were in the dumps, you were on drugs, you were drinking, you were working for Tesla, you were in a dead-end job, girlfriend dumped you. You know what, man, that I gotta show this girl that I'm gonna be successful. And that you did, my friend, right? And then you started The Passionate Few. You didn't, think about it. You literally came up with the name at the stoplight.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right. I never shared that before anywhere else.
And then, you didn't even have cameras. You didn't have equipment. You didn't have no money. You were in $30,000 debt. You literally borrowed cameras. I mean, you rented cameras.
Not only that, I
didn't even know you could do that shit.
Yeah, neither did I.
You rent cameras?
I used to, check this out, man. I used to borrow money. Imagine me 24. I used to borrow money from my mom at 24 years old. Hey, Mom, I can't afford to pay the camera crew. Can I borrow $300 to pay for the... Can you imagine? Can you imagine the amount of embarrassment?
We have another thing in common because I borrowed $20,000 from my mom when I first started my gym. I think you know that, you know that thing. So we're both, thank God, Mama.
Yeah.
Thank
Shout
God,
out to Mom.
Shout out to
Thank
my
you,
mama.
Mom and Dad. Yeah,
I appreciate it. And then, like I said, you took a bunch of imperfect action.
That, by the way, that is so important. I would honestly say, and I don't mean to interrupt you, I know this is the end here,
No.
but that is the most important thing. If there's anything you take away from this interview, ladies and gentlemen, let it be that imperfect action. That idea that's been in your head, that you've been thinking about, just do it. Fuck it, just do it imperfectly. Even if you're not sure about the name, even if you're not sure about how much to charge, just do it. Put yourself in it and trust that the pressure of being in it will pressure you to figure it out. Trust me, you won't always see the light at the end of the tunnel until you're in the tunnel. So go in the tunnel. Stop waiting for perfect time.
Whether you like Donald Trump or not, that's none of my business. But the dude showed up. Nobody thought he was going to be the president of the United States. He just took action, and look at where he's at right now. Well, if that doesn't teach you, imperfect action, and if Omar doesn't teach you imperfect action, then I don't know what does. Omar, brother, I can talk to you for days and days and days.
Oh, man.
But you know what? It's kind of like MTV Crib. You don't got to go, but you got to get the hell out of here. All right? I appreciate you, brother.
Man. It's an honor to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.